Bob, ain't that a bitch? On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, I'm joined by Snax to discuss the violent and dark Bob George from the Black Album. Welcome back to the show, Snax.
Thank you very much, Jason. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you for this song. It's been a little bit since we've collaborated on a Prince Lyrics podcast episode, but you picked a doozy, man.
I know. I was thinking, I always pick the sort of weird and nasty ones.
That's fine, because they're usually the most interesting songs to talk about.
Yeah, that's fine with me, too. Yeah. I guess I can relate to this.
I have a feeling we'll have a good time with this one. Bob George.
I think so, too. And this one is
song.
Interesting. It is a fun song, but it's not really a song so much in terms of verse, chorus, verse, or whatever. It's it's like a rap. It's like a spoken word piece almost. So taking a deep dive into the lyrics will be something interesting. Just reading them, just on their own is just hilarious.
They are pretty violent, but I think just the way that Prince delivers the lines, and we'll get into some of the performance aspects of it. The fact that it's all very one-sided. A lot of the sound effects he uses just kind of lends it to being a less disturbing. I mean, there's still some disturbing imagery going on here, disturbing lines that he speaks. But the overall song, I think, does give off a bit more of a humorous vibe than
it's really like a cartoon, sort of.
Yeah. You're right. And there's a lot of reasons why. Exactly. There's a lot of reasons why we both feel that way about a song that touches on domestic violence and shootouts.
I know.
I mean, on its surface, generally, it shouldn't be funny.
I know. I mean, I was thinking about this album actually when I was listening to it just a few moments ago, and I was like, it had such an aura about it because of it being taken from the shelves right before release and everything, and it was the Black Album, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's his nastiest, most dirtiest thing ever," and of course that just the fact that you couldn't get it just only increased its aura and everything, but then when you actually listen to the album itself, I mean, it's just it's a cool album, but it's a fun party record. I mean, this one gets probably as dark as the album gets, But when I heard that, when I read or I found out that this was like an album he put together for Sheila E.'s birthday party, and I was like, oh, that makes sense, because it sounds like a birthday party record that he kind of threw together, for fun,
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of fun to be had with this whole album, actually.
Yeah. There are several songs on here that were recorded in December of 1986, this one included, because there were, as you already mentioned, lead-ups to Sheila E.'s birthday party, which took place on December 11th, 1986. And so he had to have some of these songs kind of fleshed out and ready to perform, including Bob George. And with Bob George, one of the interesting things about this as an unreleased track was that, he never really had a true opportunity. Well, for most of the songs on this album, he never really had a true opportunity to play them live as they were, new. But this is an exception. This is one weird exception that he decided, even though it was an unreleased track in 1988, because the Black Album had been pulled from shelves, he still incorporated Bob George on his Lovesexy tour.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool. I saw the Lovesexy show, and I was obsessed with the Black Album too, and obsessed with how they were different and everything. And he did Bob George live, and I'm like, that is just so only Prince could get away with that. Knowing that everybody, his fans, would already have the bootleg, so he's gonna do the song live, a song that's not even released but is a bootleg, and he knows it, so he's gonna do it live. So it's almost like he's touring a bootleg album too at the same time. And I thought that was brilliant. I was just so happy to see it live too, because I thought it was such a cool track. Like, I mean, when I first discovered this album, if you don't mind me going into this just for a second,
No, go for it.
I'd like to go into like how all the copies of the Black Album that I had. Like I did the first one I got was this really weird like collection of 45s I found at a record convention, because like getting the Black Album on a bootleg that was a really hot commodity, and like all they had at this record convention was just these like 45s, like one song had like one side had Bob George, the other side had supercalifragilistic, and then another one had like LaGrind, and the other side was Cindy C. So it wasn't even the whole album. And I bought these 45s, and they had like pornographic covers or stuff, and they sounded just absolutely awful. Like, I mean, like a cassette of a cassette of a cassette. You could barely understand what was going on, and like the speed was off and everything. So I had to and then you get just such a raggedy produced album anyways. So I'm trying to like make sense of this music, and then later, like this girl I worked with at a record store, she made me a cassette copy, which was a little bit better, that she dubbed from like another cassette. And then I had a little better copy, and then eventually I got like a CD version, and then a vinyl version, and finally, like with each succeeding version, like the quality got better and better until until finally just I knew the album. But it was this whole it was really this like journey to like try and decipher everything that was going on this album. It was really something. And this one too, I was just like, wait a minute, is that him? Like, what is he saying? Like, and then these sound effects, like, what is going on in this track? It was really outrageous.
Yeah, I can see how that would be, especially if it was like a poor quality copy. Where this song with Prince, so Prince performed, just for anybody who hasn't heard the song, Prince performs this song in a low pitched speaking voice. So like a lot of times he's done his high pitched thing in. He was doing that for Camille. Yeah, he did that a few times in other songs, like in Erotic City. But you didn't necessarily hear him do a low-pitched voice too often.
Yeah, this is a different character.
His whole song is him playing this character, this alter ego, and this is who this. I mean, I guess this alter ego would be considered, violent, profane. Controlling, maybe misogynistic, and obviously very jealous as we go through the lyrics. Extremely jealous. That's one of the key words here, jealous. And the other thing about that is like, okay, so this song wasn't released, but he performed it on Love Sexy, but Love Sexy was supposed to be kind of like his alternate, like his response to the Black Album, making something positive and spiritual, but how does Bob George fit in? So for anybody who didn't go to that show, like myself, but I'm obviously aware of how it was portrayed and how it was laid out, is Prince put a lot of fronted the tour set list with a lot of the more dirty, sexy, grittier songs in his catalog.
Yeah, it wasn't 2 acts.
Yes, and did this finish the first act, or like maybe the second to last song?
I was just trying to think that I think it ended Act 1. Yeah, it ended on a real bang. No, you know what? I think it was the second to last song, and then he ended it with it might have ended with Anastasia. Maybe. I might have got that wrong. It ended on like a softer note, and then he went into like the whole Love Sexy thing. It was sort of like a transitional song. I think. I'm not so sure about that. It was definitely.
No, I think you're right.
It was something like that. Yeah.
Because I know he gets shot at the end of performing this song.
Yeah, and there's some kind of resurrection somehow. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Because like I said, the song is violent, and it's dark in its lyrics and its imagery, but it's done in a kind of comical way. Like even on tour, like you see the Love Sexy tour hasn't been like officially remastered and put out there on nice pristine crisp Blu-ray DVDs. But I've seen images. I hope so. I've seen images of his outfit that he wears in this performance. He's got like these goofy glasses on, and it's all very like comically violent, like a gangster movie or something like a Dick Tracy or something like that. I mean, his language is coarse, And the words he uses is not PG or kid friendly or comic book, but I think a lot of like the imagery he was putting out there during the performance of the song on tour, and just the incorporation of some like comedic elements, some lines that you can't help but chuckle at, even
yeah, it was almost
used.
like slapstick the way it was being performed on stage too, with him like running around and with these like, you know, cheesy sound effects and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, good description of that. But
it wasn't even like, oh, this is so disturbing. You know, it was more like, oh,
yeah,
it was like,
yeah.
it was like
that was smart.
Comedy.
It was smart of him to do it that way, especially when he was going to incorporate it in the Love Sexy tour, because yeah, it's intended to be like a transition between the dark and the light side, or the you know, the violent and the spiritual side. But if you take people down too dark of a path before you cross that bridge and move to that, then it's kind of hard for them to I think kind of side with the performer. Like, wow, I can't believe you would go here or go there, because without some of the comedic parts of this, the lyrics of this performance, it could have come across too dark and too violent.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I would say that this one specifically is the one that could have crossed that line. You know, even just listening to the album, you're kind of like, you could be sort of like, whoa, okay, all right, he went there. You know, but you know, still, it kind of just gets to that limit, but doesn't really cross the line, I don't think. You know, and I think in general, like, it's funny when you compare these two albums. I think that Love Sexy as an album is actually a more cohesive statement, you know, and he does seem kind of more inspired on that album, and it does seem like a kind of a more, for want of a better word, like proper album to release. But it's not, if you put them side by side, I mean, Black Album is definitely more like my go-to album. Like, it's an album that I enjoy more than Love Sexy. That's just my personal taste, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bit heavy-handed with all of the like, oh, I have this big spiritual message, you know, and I have to give it to you now, you know what I mean? And it was a bit, yeah, I thought it was a bit over the top. Where Bob George is just like, yeah, I'm just going to make these funky jams, and, you know, they're wild and crazy, and, you know, and then 8 songs and we're out.
Yeah, there's nothing quite as funny as Bob George on Love Sexy, or something so outrageous as Bob George on Love Sexy. Yeah, it's an outrageous song.
Yeah, it is.
One thing I wanted to bring up, well, a couple things more before we jump into the lyrics. I wanted to bring up like a lot of the samples that you hear on this song, I guess, came from his Fairlight CMI. So that's just kind of one of those things to note about, like, okay, well, I hear gunshots. Where did he get those gunshots? Were they pulled from a CD or some you know, recording from 30, 40 years ago? No, they were just samples that were on his Fairlight. So they
the very last one is that voice that goes bizarre, like kind of laughing, and you know, that came from a Frank Zappa album. Are you aware of that?
I heard that. I didn't know specifically, but yeah, I read that somewhere.
I think it was I don't know if it was his girlfriend or his wife or one of the GTOs or something. But yeah, it's a sample of, and he like donated it to the people who made the Fairlight as a sample that they could use. So I thought that was kind of funny, this like connection there between Prince and Frank Zappa.
Yeah,
he was very fond of that sample. He used it a lot on like the Madhouse albums too and stuff.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is the genesis of the name Bob George. So I'm sure you've read the same stories that I've read about where the two names, it's like a combination of his former manager, Bob Cavallo, and Nelson George, who was a music critic that was, you know, championed Prince early on, but then around the World in a Day and Parade started to kind of be a little more critical of his music. And so Prince probably took, and I guess he, you know, at this time, his relationship with Bob Cavallo wasn't the greatest either. So if
it started to fall apart.
Yeah, so if he's going to create a fake name for an alter ego, figures, well, why not take, you know, names of two people that I'm not real happy with right now and use their names friends or people that he was happy with. But
well, was Nelson George one of the ones? I mean, there was supposedly this whole thing of like people saying Prince wasn't funky anymore, or he turned his back on his black audience or something. Was this actually something that Nelson George was responsible for saying or implying?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I just find that so ridiculous. I think ultimately, like, honestly, I think he shelved the record because he just didn't think it was that good. I think maybe he was just like, this is not my best, and like, it isn't really his best. Like, that's what I mean about Love Sexy being a sort of more coherent record, because, it is. And I think he wanted to make something that was, I think he said something like, if I die, I don't want that to be my last statement. And I'm like, I can dig that. I can understand that. I don't think it was, I mean, maybe there's also the story about him having a bad trip on ecstasy. I mean, that's probably very possible too. But I think most likely he was just like, yeah, it's not, it's subpar. It's not my best work. I don't want to just throw it out there just because I can, so more power to him for doing that,
Yeah, ultimately we all got it, and he approved its official release in 1994. But by that time, its impact had worn off, and its aura had kind of worn off. It was being dubbed as, the infamous Black Album, or it's like, well, yeah, but by 1994, if you didn't already have a bootleg or you hadn't heard it, a bootleg, you were just coming to it fresh. 7 years after it was supposed to be released, you're not going to be that impressed.
It doesn't. Really. It doesn't have the same impact. I mean, by that time, it was the infamous contract obligation album. That's what it was. I mean,
that's
like
really more accurate.
He wanted to get out of his contract, so he's just like, oh well, I'll put out this album, which is already done and that people know about. So I mean, it didn't sell. I don't think either. I don't think it did very well at all. It was in and out of the stores. So.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a big seller in 1994. It was too little too late. It needed to come out in 87, 88 if it was going to make any impact at all, and it didn't. So here we are.
I want to say one more thing about the structure of the music of the song. I think what is also really cool about this is that it's once again Prince revisiting 12-bar blues. Like the 1-4-5 chord progression that happens in blues, which he's done in Delirious, and which he did in Kiss, and which he did more like, I guess the closest to this track would be You Got the Look. So I always think that's kind of cool that he did so much with that progression. And I mean, it's a really minimal, very cool electronic track, but when you break it down in terms of the chords, it's a really just minimal blues progression. I think that's really, I love that he does that. He does so much with that progression, and this is another example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay,
my pleasure.
I think one of the things about this song, as we kind of talked about, the lyrics are kind of delivered almost like stream of consciousness or like in a rapping style. It doesn't have, as you mentioned, your traditional verse, chorus, verse structure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the lyrics like pretty straightforward. There's quite a few lines that I'm going to read up front, and then we'll just kind of talk piece by piece through pieces of or aspects of it, because it kind of flows like a story, like it's a story song, and if I break it up at unnatural points, it might seem like the lines might not seem like to flow properly. So I'm just going to read for a while. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing you hear in the intro is the "Damn, let me see you dance," and that's just something that he says later on in the song too. But
is that when he says "dance"? See, I never got that. It sounds like he says "gay," like somebody's name, like the woman's name is Gay or something. Let me see you dance, or Gail or something.
Is it
damn? Damn. Okay, that would make more sense. Yeah.
Let me see you dance, and then we get to the actual real lyrics of the song, because then there's some more music in between that little intro statement and then where
it's an incredible bass line. It's so cool.
Yeah, the bass is so dope, and it's funky as hell. But one thing that I wanted to bring up is this character Prince is portraying in the song goes unnamed. So we don't have a name for this character. We're just going to call him, the alter ego, or just Prince in this case, for lack of a better word. So he goes, "New coat, huh? That's nice. Did you buy it? Yeah, right. You seeing that rich motherfucker again. You know who I'm talking about. That slick back Patty with all the gold in his mouth. They'll try to play me for yesterday's fool. Because I'll slap your ass into the middle of next week. I'm sorry, baby. That's the rules. I pay the rent in this raggedy motherfucker. All right, so I'm going to pause there. And then when we talk about and we're ready to move on, I will really kind of repeat the last line to kind of give listeners a sense for where we're going with these lyrics.
Okay.
All right, so he's asking questions of what we have to assume is a woman, some significant other, girlfriend, whatever you want to call her. Talking about like she walks. I get the image of her walking in the door and she's wearing this coat, and of course he immediately points out that it looks new. Like he doesn't recognize this coat. New coat, huh? That's nice. Did you buy it? And then he doesn't. We don't hear an answer, but because he says right after that, yeah, right. You have to assume she said yes, I did, or something along.
Yeah.
That. And this is where his jealousy kind of really comes out. You get a sense for this character he's playing here is extremely jealous of his girlfriend or his wife, whoever she is, to him, because he's immediately like accusing her of stepping out on him.
Yeah,
seeing that rich motherfucker again, is what he says. So like with these first few lines, these handful of lines before we get to paying the rent. What do you see here, Snax, that kind of you want to point out, or just some interesting lines or things that he says here that you find intriguing?
Well, I what I think what first comes to mind reading it and actually listening to it again recently is Richard Pryor. Like I just keep thinking Richard Pryor. Like it's like a kind of a kind of a jive talk sort of parody. And even though this was an album that was made or quasi-released in 87 or recorded in 86, this vernacular was really like old school, like when they say like slick back Patty with the gold in his mouth and stuff like that, and slap your ass in the middle of next week. I mean, no one was really talking like that back then, It sounds like he's like sort of doing his kind of, sort of pimp persona. Yep. Like sort of recalling like the Morris Day character or the Jamie Starr character, and maybe even picking up some of his lines. I think maybe I could fantasize about him picking up some lines from like his father or something, or like from his scenes, sort of, from like the 50s, and kind of jive talk from that era. Like it definitely doesn't sound like I don't know what like hip hop guys were saying around that time or whatever, No. And I think that also adds to the comedy because you're so like, oh, come on, like we can't take this guy seriously. Like who talks like this, Yeah,
you almost feel like he's kind of like he's older. Like Prince would have been late 20s, and I don't get the impression that this character he's playing in the song is a mid 20s or late 20s age. You feel like he's older, like 40s, 50s, maybe.
And that and the lower voice definitely speaks to that as well.
The slick back Patty with all the gold in his mouth. That is a line that can be misunderstood or misheard just because the way he says it, and it also, again, it's not language that you hear every day. It's a bit even in 1987, the vernacular, as you mentioned, is a little bit dated. Slap your ass into the middle of next week. That's our first line that kind of hints to the violence, or at least the violent tendencies of this character. He's not afraid to get violent in order to get his point across, or in order to intimidate this woman. So he's willing to.
This track doesn't waste any time getting to the swear words and the violence, and it's crazy when you think about how like Prince didn't use swear words later on in life, when he became a Jehovah's Witness and stuff. And then you listen to this and you're like, oh my God.
I think that was probably one of his biggest challenges. Was cutting out the cursing.
I know. I
mean, it was just part of who he was, and part of how he was raised, and part of
I think this old time vernacular is something that was in a lot of his music. He always kind of had this sort of like, what's another example? Even in like 1999, like I don't know, just some of the stuff that some of his lyrics and some of the things we were doing, they seem like they can, because he's a synthesis of so many different eras and stuff, and so I feel that he would, this kind of like kind of older school vernacular. It actually appears in some of his other tracks as well.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's one particular word that he used a few times early in his career, and I'm trying to think of what it is that I always thought it was humorous when he would say it.
Like my drawers or something, like my drawers, like talking about like, oh, this is my woman, this is my drawers, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's another term for that. I pay the rent in this raggedy motherfucker. And then after that, he says, all you do is suck up food and heat. Say what? Oh, yeah. For someone who can't stand them TV dinners, you sure eat enough of them motherfuckers. Who bought you that diamond ring? Yeah, right. Since when did you get a job? You seeing that rich motherfucker again. What's his name? Bob? Bob. Ain't that a bitch? What's he do for a living? Manage rock stars. Who? Prince? Ain't that a bitch? That skinny motherfucker with the high voice? Please, who do I look like, baby? Yesterday's fool? Don't you know I will kill you now? You're fucking right. I got a gun. You think I don't? Then what's this? Oh, you quiet now. Uh-huh. Little? Yeah, right. It might be little, but it's loud. All right, so this is we got like domestic violence 101 going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here in that like second verse, really. Yeah,
because at this point now you almost get like the impression that he's like holding her hostage. Like we've got a hostage situation. It's kind of or developing hostage situation.
Right. But at the same time that he's like talking about the gun, he's making a joke about his dick too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
He's serving it up on like a platter of comedy.
Yeah. So just moving backwards. So the lines, all you do is suck up food and heat. For someone who can't stand them TV dinners, you sure eat enough of them, motherfucker. That is comedy. That's straight comedy.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Straight up comedy. And
that's like the like straight out of like the Recasto school, It's probably like a line he had like hanging around for a while and he wanted to put it in a song or in a movie, and it ended up in this one.
Yeah, these are the lines that really kind of point to maybe some of the older school comedians that he'd grown up listening to, your Rudy Ray Moores and Richard Pryor, and where
Mom's Mabley.
And the violence is, and the language and the insults are used to comedic effect.
Yeah, when you were saying he probably, you were talking about the records that he might have been listening to in his formative years. I was also thinking Blowfly. So it's kind of a Blowfly thing going on here too.
Yes, for sure.
That nasty rapping.
Lots of influences, lots of different, influences he could have pulled from to kind of create this persona or help him create this persona for this song.
Well, persona is the word because, still at this time he was considered, the like enigmatic kind of, mysterious, Prince that still people knew from Purple Rain. I mean, he was kind of trying to, maybe change that, definitely change that with like Under the Cherry Moon and stuff like that. But still, he has to sort of play a character in order to like make fun of himself. When he says like that skinny motherfucker with the high voice and everything. I mean, he's not taking himself so seriously, as Prince the artist. And I think that's worth mentioning here too, because it wasn't until years later, or even after he died, that people were like, Prince was really funny. Like he doesn't get a lot of credit for being like hilarious. But he was one of the funniest people you would, if you really knew him and you were friends with him, he could just crack you up, and I think this is a real example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, we are getting into, it's this weird dichotomy between like comedy and like ultra violence and misogyny too. So it's a weird balance here.
Yeah. You almost got to laugh to keep from cringing, I guess.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the line, who bought you that diamond ring? That's another one where like, where'd you get that coat? Now he notices her diamond ring. Who bought you that diamond ring? Yeah, right. Since when do you have a job? So she kind of must have lied to him, or at least he thinks that she lied to him. Again, we don't know for a fact. We're hearing one side. Maybe this character is so delusional and so jealous that he thinks that she's stepping out on him when even though she's not. Although later on in the song, you kind of understand maybe that's not true, but it's too jealous and can't see past this ability for her to even, like, she must have lied before, I guess, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think with like the claustrophobia of the production and sort of his delivery and stuff, it almost has a like on the darker side of things, has like a Taxi Driver feel to it. Like, you talking to me? That kind of that scene, sort of. He almost could be talking to a mirror. Like, maybe it's one-sided because actually no one's even there. He could be actually like almost practicing like a confrontation in a way.
Wow.
And
I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's well, when you said that thing about one-sided, I was like, well, this is totally one-sided. I mean, you could imagine that someone's there. It could also be that no one's there and he's just like rambling to himself, and I think that ratchets up the kind of sort of insanity of this character.
Yeah, and he's filling in the blanks, like when he says,
exactly,
watch that diamond ring, because he's so insane with jealousy that he already has an answer in his head, even though it may not be the accurate answer. The answer says, yeah, she's stepping out on you, because when you have that kind of delusion, everybody's out to get you kind of situation.
Yeah, exactly.
You're always going to see the worst in people, and in his mind, this woman is not faithful, and that's what he's assuming.
Yeah, he's already made up his mind.
Exactly. And we do finally get, the namesake of the song. What's his name? Bob. Ain't that a bitch? And then this is where we get, of course, one of the most quotable lines of the song when he talks about, who does he manage? Oh, he manages rock stars. So that's why he's quote unquote rich. He calls him that rich motherfucker. And then what does he do for a living to become rich? Well, he manages rock stars. Who does he manage? Prince. Ain't that a bitch? That skinny motherfucker with the high voice. And I think that is probably the line of this song that most people cite or are able to cite by memory, or like pick out a line in the song that you certainly are drawn to, or think is funny, or think is memorable. That's going to be the line.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
it's very self-aware, and it's really funny, actually.
It's notorious that line. Absolutely.
I believe that line has been used by other artists in samples and like kind of repurposed for different rappers' music in the past, just to kind of like cite it, or because it is so kind of clever and funny, self-referential, that they're able to take that and turn it into something new and different for their own art. It is that line, man. It's just that line that people like to point out and like to kind of help identify this character who is very kind of dismissive of rock stars in general and Prince specifically. I love that he was able to write this line about himself. Dig a little bit at himself. Although calling himself skinny can be considered a dig, or it can be considered flattery, depending on what you're.
I think that speaks to who this character is. I mean, obviously, I think this character is supposed to be somebody kind of big and brawny, who would consider Prince a skinny motherfucker,
Yeah. It doesn't say short motherfucker. He says skinny motherfucker. So
that's true. Actually, yeah. I mean, short might have been a bridge too far, because
maybe
we're pretty sure that he was pretty insecure about that always. Yeah. But I was somewhere, I forget where it was. I think somebody wrote I remember reading an essay about Prince, not a book, a whole book or something. But the title of the essay was actually the skinny motherfucker with the high voice. Yeah,
exactly. Like this line transcends the song. It transcends the Black Album. It just becomes so iconic of a kind of a quotable line from the song. And there's quite a few quotable lines from the song, but that takes the cake, I guess. So
Yeah, I think "Ain't That a Bitch" too. I mean, probably because it's
yeah,
repeated so much,
Bob, ain't that a bitch? Yep.
Yeah, and Prince "Ain't That a Bitch." Yeah.
Yep, Prince, ain't that a bitch? And
I
so
think
then we
I
get
mean, he's still like, but further on, like in this passage that you just read, he still makes fun of himself because he introduces the gun. Um, what's that thing? Chekhov's gun. Like if you introduce a gun in the first act, you have to use it by the third act.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what's happening here in this very theatrical song. But then, right as he introduces it, he makes a reference to his dick.
Pretty much, yeah, little, because you
Might
get the
be
impression
little, but is loud. Yeah.
you get the impression that he's been, like this is maybe another aspect of their dysfunctional relationship that he's fed up with, or if he's starting to, like, you feel like the one line too many has been crossed. The straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Like he's got all of this anger and resentment built up over jealousy, over maybe her stepping out on him. So anybody who's been cheated on probably wonders what's wrong with me. And maybe that's his character's, his alter ego's, one of his flaws, his self-perceived flaws, is that he's a little dick. And so little, yeah, right. It might be little, but it's loud. And so this is
that's hence all thus all the bravado and all of the machismo.
Yeah.
It's sort of like make up for that quote unquote deficiency. But and then I also think that like what really gets under this character's skin is the fact that, I mean, the actual Prince himself was annoyed with his manager and this songwriter, this music critic. So if the woman he's with is actually going to have an affair, and if it's actually going to be with them, or a composite, this person, Bob George, then I think that's also like the final straw that breaks the camel's back. Like, not only are you stepping on me, but it's with this person. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work at all.
Yeah, and we know that or at least he's trying to give the impression that he's serious. Like this isn't just for show. This bravado and this threats of violence. Don't you know I will kill you now? You're fucking right. I got a gun. You think I don't? So I think maybe this is potentially the first time that it's escalated to this level. There might have been some threats of violence before, or maybe some empty threats of, I'll slap your ass into the middle next week kind of stuff, but then no follow through. But maybe this song is the first time these characters it's gotten to this level of escalation where the gun gets pulled out and he threatens to kill her, not just slap her anymore. I will kill you now. So it's definitely gotten escalated to the point where you think that this might be it. This might be the big one.
And this is interesting too, because this is when I believe in the track is when he introduces the guitar. Like up to this point, it's just been this like weird bass, kind of noisy bass, and the drum machine, and then all of a sudden, when the gun comes, then comes the guitar too for like a bit more drama. That's a nice touch.
And when he says that it might be little, but it's loud, this is when you first also start hearing the gunshots, the Fairlight gunshots. So that's introduced into the song at this point as well. Anything else you want to talk about before I move on with these lines?
I think we got it for now. Yeah, I think we can go on to the more disturbing second act, if you will.
Yeah, basically the hostage situation now.
yeah.
Because what he does now is that he starts giving her directives.
Yeah.
Now put that suitcase down and go in there and put on that wig I bought you. No, the reddish brown one. Bob, ain't that a bitch? And then there's some pauses in there. He says, "Ooh, gotcha." And then he says, "Hey, Bob."
That's when the shooting starts, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely shooting there.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, if you're out there, let me see you dance. You said he was funky. Come on. Ain't that a bitch? Wow. Okay, so this is an interesting one as well, because I don't know what he's doing here. I don't know if his character is directing her to put on this wig because he just, like, the wig turns him on, but it also, like, reminds him of maybe somebody else, and it'll be easier to kill her if she looks like somebody else. I honestly don't know.
It gets pretty rapey here now. I mean, that's let's call it what it is, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing about like commanding her to do things and everything. This is when it gets pretty dark. Like, put on a wig,
and I
basically
like
be forcing her to be some, what he wants her to be, in terms of like the wig and everything, and at gunpoint and everything. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. You said it exactly what I was going to say. Like, I get the impression now that he is forcing her to do these things at gunpoint. Like, he's not just like strongly suggesting like this. He's got a gun pointed to her. You're going to do this. You're going to go in there. You're going to pull out this wig. No, not that one. The other wig. The reddish brown one, and places for her to go and things for her to do, without, and she has no say in it. Like, she's doing it against her will.
Yeah, we've gone from like Blowfly Richard Pryor to more like Ike Turner now. Yeah. Ike Turner territory where it gets a little bit much. I mean, he's playing a character, but he's getting into this like psycho persona, and this like psycho obsessive, very controlling, completely destructive persona. Yeah.
What do you think about the lines, "Hey Bob, if you're out there, let me see you dance. You said he was funky."
Yeah, I think that he's. I mean, now he's sort of like he crossed that fourth. He crashed the fourth wall, sort of. And now he's like saying like he's announcing to the world that like, yes, I'm, doing this horrible thing. I don't give a fuck, and like it's almost like, Bob, I'm coming after you next. Like, let me see you dance. Like, it's kind of like he's like maybe gonna like make someone dance by like shooting at their feet or something.
Yeah, you pretty much got it. What I was thinking too, because I don't really think he cares if Bob can like pull off dance moves.
No.
I don't think they're gonna have a dance off.
They're not having a dance off. Yeah, it's metaphorical. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see you dance.
But it's funny. It's also. I mean, this is also actually where the song kind of composition comes in, because he says, "Let me see you dance" in the beginning too. So it's kind of like, oh, is this a dance track? Is it a funky track? And he says it in the same kind of rhythm and everything. So it is funky too at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole delivery is funky. I mean, it really is like a rap. When you're reading the lyrics, you're like, just on their own, especially if you haven't heard the song, I'm sure someone's going to be like, what the hell is this? But it makes sense, in the song, because it's actually on the beat. And with this line especially, it's definitely one that's almost like he's telling people to get up and party in this really sick and twisted way.
Yeah. Yep. In the next grouping of lines is when now he starts to introduce other characters besides just the main character, the protagonist. So you hear Prince in his Midwestern kind of white guy voice that he sometimes does.
Oh, yeah.
"Come out with your hands up," this character says. "I'll kick your ass." Then you hear, "This is your last warning. Think I won't?" And then the Midwestern character, who I, of course, take to be some sort of policeman.
Yeah.
"Oh, no, the N-word's got a laser." I'm not going to say it, but he says the N-word.
Yeah.
It's got a laser.
Yeah.
"Let's get the hell out of here." And he says that in like some kind of Midwestern white person accent.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I get.
It's really funny is when he talks like that too. And I think his voice is pitched up too. He's obviously supposed to sound like a white cop,
Yeah.
And definitely a foil to the character with the gun, and just when he realizes Prince playing both characters, it's kind of when the whole thing just turns into a comedy routine again. And by this point, we have
just any white cop, but a racist white cop on top of it.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And it's with all the sound effects. By this point, all the sound effects are everything, and like even like old timey like the sound with the bells and everything. Like police didn't have bells anymore. when they were like going to chase somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it gets it gets sort of comedic again at this point. And yeah, I mean, we have some repetition here again. Like he says, "Ain't that a bitch?" And he goes, "Bob." He says Bob, and it's really sort of like, really dismissive kind of. Very, very awful.
He's saying it like, "I hate this dude." Because I guess in this character's mind, this Bob guy's got everything he doesn't, and he's not just jealous of this woman, but jealous of maybe what Bob has too.
Totally. I don't know where he's got a laser thing comes from. Like what?
I don't know.
I mean, I think that might have just been another sound on the Fairlight. Like, oh, this sounds like a laser. I guess now this.
Like I got to address it. I'm using laser sound effects. I got to address it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, I got to use all the sound effects and make them fit somehow. So, I think that's probably the only thing we can decipher from that line.
Yeah, and I think you start to hear like some explosions, and it gets like there's a shootout going on around that time. Yeah. Then it kind of quiets down a little bit, and then we get a conversation with Mr. George. And this part is funny to me because it harkens back to me like Peanuts. Because you get the one side of the conversation, and then on the other side of the conversation, you're hearing something happening in the background, and it's like kind of sounds like a really sped up voice that's a little bit sounds like somebody's playing with a tape. Speeding up a tape sounds like it's not the exact same sound that was used in Peanuts, but it has like the same kind of effect where you have to kind of only just use your imagination to kind of get what the second half of the conversation's going based off of the clues given to you by the one half that we do get. So he says, "Is Mr. George home?" "Hello, Mr. George. This is your conscience, motherfucker. But why don't you leave motherfuckers alone? What's wrong with you? Well, why can't we just dance? Why can't we just dance? No, fuck that. Fuck that. I don't talk about you. I don't talk about you. With your little almond-shaped head ass. Who the fuck do you think this is? I'll kick your ass twice. Bob, if you're out there, let me see you dance. You said he was funky. Come on." So yeah, now he's got Bob George on the phone now. He's somehow able to get his personal self.
It's really getting off the rails now too. Yeah,
he's able to get his personal number. Maybe the woman gave it to her. I mean, she's got a gun to her head. We have to assume. So he's like, "Hey, give me Bob's number. I want to talk to this motherfucker." So that maybe is how he got her number or his number. And so he's just kind of like, confronting him, trying to basically say, leave me and my woman alone. That's what he's trying to say. What's wrong with you? Why, Ben Delph brings up the, why can't we just dance? Why can't we just dance?
I love that line. I think that line is so like odd. It's like this character is so crazed right now that he doesn't even know what he's saying. Like, why can't we just dance? Doesn't really make any sense. Like, why is he talking about dancing now? You know what I mean? It sounds like it's his synapses are just firing on all cylinders. That he's just sort of like, oh, what? It's sort of like I don't know. It's like he's trying to reason with Bob George somehow in some kind of like totally outlandish way that makes no sense. It just doesn't make sense. I think that adds to the kind of psychosis of the whole character. And this part of the song I almost see is like, okay, he's killed everybody. Now there's like carnage everywhere, and now the last thing to do is just sort of just go after this Bob guy, because like, that's how it seems like to me, because we had so much gunshots and we've had lasers and explosions and, the cops are running for the hills and everything. So it's like, he's done it. Yeah. Again, it's like Taxi Driver. There's just like bodies around, and blood and everything. And so.
Yeah. I don't get the impression that she's still alive at this point in the song.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah.
He has moved on to his next target, which is Bob.
Yeah.
And he just genuinely sounds hurt. Like he sounds hurt. That
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
guy.
That's what exactly. That's where I think the "Why Can't We Just Dance?" He sounds like hurt. He almost sounds vulnerable at that point.
Exactly. He sounds hurt. Like why I mean basically you broke the guy code by, stealing another man's woman, and that's bullshit. Like why would you do that? I don't talk about you. Why don't you leave motherfuckers alone? Why do you have to come after me and my
Right.
woman? You obviously have more money than me. You're more successful. You maybe have a bigger dick. I don't know.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It's
you're
massively
less
massively
crazy.
paranoid. Yeah.
You're a
That's
bit
just,
more stable.
it's
So
like just
he's just
massively
very,
insecure on like every single level. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Um, let's see, anything else? I mean, the almond shaped head ass is another funny kind of insult.
I don't even know who is that directed towards actually. Like, I mean, I don't know what Bob Cavallo actually looked like, or I think I know what Nelson George looks like. I don't remember him having an almond shaped head, but that's really mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just an insult he wanted to use, and
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Tricky, the track by the time, when he was talking about like. You big toss salad hairdo having long, tall, snaggly gold tooth, bumping, just like cutting someone
yeah,
down to size
yeah.
in that track, and this is like definitely a cousin to that.
Yeah, it's not so much the actual words that are being said, the insults being said. It's just the intent that I'm going to insult you, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but the intent is to insult you.
Yeah,
Even if,
it's
even if your even if your head isn't quite shaped like an almond, but I'm going to call it that because I'm going to kind of pinpoint maybe a slight flaw,
yeah,
physical flaw that you might have, and I'm going to exaggerate it tenfold.
yep,
And that's what
yep.
that's what a lot of these digs are about, just exaggerating minor flaws to make them sound like they're just the worst.
It's like talking about someone's mama, like your mom is so fat, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Super
just kind of,
exaggerated insults.
yeah,
All right, so then towards the very end, one of the last things he says in the song, it's another funny line. B-O-B, spell that shit backwards. What did it say? Say motherfucking shit. Turn it out.
it's just stupid. Yeah. like
Um,
like is that supposed to be insulting? I don't like why.
yeah,
I
right.
don't know why I even brought that up.
I mean, he's not wrong. He spelled Bob backwards. Spelled the same forwards and backwards.
Yeah, well,
What that has a name too. I forget what it's called when something's spelled the same forwards and backwards.
oh yeah, I can't remember what that is either. But it is sort of a kind of a bizarre observation to make after everything else. And another thing, like your name spelled backwards is the same. What's up with that?
Yeah, that is called a palindrome.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So Bob is a
Good.
palindrome, and apparently it's another thing that he can dig on him.
Yeah,
he's,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
running
yeah,
out of
yeah.
he's running out of like legitimate digs. So he's going to dig on
Exactly.
the shape of his head and the fact that his name spelled forward and backwards is identical. And but then the actual dig is the same motherfucking shit.
Yeah.
So yep. But then the final line of the song is Bob, ain't that a bitch? Because got to end it kind of the way with one of the
Yeah.
common lines of the song.
Yeah. 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 Well, if there's a hook in the song, it's the repetition.
Mm-hmm.
At least with the lyrically, it is the repetition. So yeah. So I mean, like, what do we have here? We have a guy whose woman comes home and she stepped out on him, and he can tell, or he's imagined that she had, and he's accusing her of all these things. And then he brings out a gun, and then he has her at gunpoint to do all these things, and then he kills her. And then the cops come, and they're afraid of him because he has a laser gun, and they run away. And then he calls the guy that she's having the affair with, and cuts him down to size on the telephone, and that's at the end.
Yeah, I mean, he was really into like creating these really cinematic sounding songs around this time. I think of like Crystal Ball as another example of a very
Yes.
cinematic song. It
Mm.
has a complete. I mean, there's some there's some death and destruction and things like that going on in Crystal Ball, but it's not a violent song. It just has death and violence in like what's happening around the characters of the song, but it's not about that so much.
The Fairlight features very heavily on that one as well.
hmm And so it's just like he has this new toy, and so
Yeah.
these cinematic soundscapes, and then to put lyrics to that, to put words to that, with the technology that he now had and the ability to incorporate sound effects, and you almost like you could create a movie or cinema experience in a 4, 5, 6, 7 minute song. And this is another great example of it. It's a dark, violent movie, but with some comedic elements to it, but it's still kind of like a movie experience. You get a start, you get a middle, you get 3 different acts basically,
Yeah.
and you kind of get a conclusion. The conclusion, as we went through it, is a lot of death surrounding this character. He's chased away the cops. He's killed what we believe he's killed his girlfriend or wife. He has a confrontation with the antagonist of the song, Bob George, and it kind of closes. The credits roll over potentially suicidal or just kind of like given up on life,
Yeah.
given up
Yeah.
on whatever. We don't get a true conclusion, like what happens to this character. Does he go to jail? Does he kill himself? Is he already been injured in the shootout with the cops? We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can use our imagination to kind of figure out how the story ends, but it's definitely cinematic.
Yeah. 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 It's almost like it's cinematic in the terms of like like I just came to mind Scarface or something, like Scarface, like nabbing down all of his enemies in this like complete coke psychosis, and what happens to him at the end, I mean, he gets like brutally killed at the end, but it's got that, it does have that sort of conclusive ending in a way. Yeah. So in terms of cinema, I mean, you really nailed it when you said it was cinematic, and that certainly was on Prince's mind a lot at this time.
I think so too. There's a few examples of that around this 86, 87 time period of songwriting that it just feels at home with that, even though he's never really created a song like this before. Just the not in tone, not in content, but just the idea that he had a vision in his mind about something, a story he wanted to tell, and how can he deliver that in a unique way. Boy, Bob George is one of the most unique songs in his whole catalog, so I would say he knocked it out of the park in terms of uniqueness. There isn't another Bob George in his discography that I can come up with off the top of my head.
No, I was just thinking that as well. It really is quite singular. But it also speaks to how this album, people consider it his sort of like kind of first foray or like answer directly to rap, because this is kind of a rap song, and in terms of like the way he's delivering the lyrics, even though it's not hip hop really, but it's got the minimal quality of hip hop. It's got somebody talking. Yeah, more something that, because Dead On It is on this album too, and that was definitely his sort of like how hip hop is bullshit kind of song, which he would eat those words later. But I think with this one is where he's sort of like, oh yeah, I can be tough too, and sort of like talk about guns and violence as well, but I'm going to do it in my own sort of comical, funny, off way, in a sort of cinematic and unreal kind of way. I think this also because, well, I don't know. I mean, who was around there? Maybe Boogie Down Productions kind of had that sort of like gritty. Or KRS One had that like kind of gritty feel too. But it wasn't. That
their
wasn't
first album was
gangster,
violent. Criminal Minded was the name of
Yeah,
the
exactly. So
violent.
in a way, it was starting to get into that point Yeah, I think by the time that this album actually like people knew it and stuff was when that stuff was sort of happening. So you're like, oh, this is sort of him like responding to that. But he had actually done it. He actually recorded it,
Yeah,
a
it's
year or two
fascinating.
before.
It's fascinating
Yeah.
what he was trying to do here.
Hmm.
Kind of really, and he might have been inspired by movies like Scarface and stuff like that. A
Yeah.
Taxi
Yeah.
Driver, as you already mentioned. The cinematic aspects of it kind of lend me to believe that, there's been violent movies, ever since basically movies, 20s and 30s. There was gangster movies and stuff. So
Sure.
um, he had a lot of potential inspiration options. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
All right. So Snacks, do you have any final thoughts on Bob George or anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, I'm curious if they're ever going to re-release this album, actually,
Be
because
nice.
it's not streaming, it's not anything anymore. So I guess they were sticking to that. What the deal was that it would be a limited release when it was actually officially released, and I guess they've just stuck with that. So
Mhm.
I'm assuming that they're going to. I mean, I would imagine that they're going to be doing it, re-releasing it some kind of way, but I don't know when, and yeah, we'll see. But I hope they do because I mean, it's actually a really, I mean, I think this is a great track. It's super funky and it's unique, like you said. I think the production is great, and the rest of the album is for the most part is pretty is really good too. So I hope that does come out.
Yeah, me
Um,
too. It needs to be on streaming platforms like the official Prince channel on YouTube. You can't find it there. You can find it on YouTube, but it's unofficial. It's just from
yeah.
somebody who was able to put up a copy of it, and somehow it hasn't been taken down or
Uh,
given copyright strikes. I'm not sure how that works, but
yeah.
makes me wonder, like, if it's kind of a unofficially sanctioned in order to allow it to be on there.
Yeah.
But definitely can't find it on Spotify. That's for sure.
No, no, definitely not. Or Tidal or anywhere else. Yeah.
Hmm.
So one of these days, and it's um it's funny when we were talking about the sound quality of the bootlegs, because I remember when it finally did come out officially, I was kind of like, it still doesn't sound very good, like sound quality wise. It really does sound like lo-fi or just really quickly recorded, quickly mixed, quickly mastered. And
Yeah.
again, I think that sort of speaks to the fact that this was just this was a rush job, kind of for fun. And but I also think that's another thing that makes it really interesting, because hearing Prince make an album for fun in the mid to late '80s was still a wonderful thing.
Yeah. It's
And
it's
the bass line and the drum machine on this track are so awesome too. I mean, I was obsessed with that drum pattern. I still am on
yeah.
this track. That's really what makes this track for me, and just how it's just that and guitar. I love it. So cool.
Me too. I think Bob George is my favorite song in the Black Album, personally.
Yeah, I think all of side. I love all of side too. Actually, just bam, bam, bam. The whole thing. It's great.
Hmm. Very cool. Well, Snacks, where can people find you and your music?
Well, I'm on the interwebs. You can find me on Instagram at House of Snaxine. That's House of Snaxine. I'm also on Facebook. I also, if you don't mind me plugging a couple releases of mine,
Oh, go for it.
I recently started a project with one of the resident DJs at this famous club here named Berghain. His name is Andreas Baumecker, and when lockdown started, we created an album and a new project called Snacker, and the first official release of ours has been out now for a few weeks. It's called Mandemic, and you can get that on all the streaming platforms. Again, the name is Snecker, and the EP is called Mandemic. So that just came out, and not long before that, my husband has a project called Unconscious Honey. It's synth pop, and he has a lot of guest vocalists. And the album's called Loose Beginnings. And I think if your listeners like Prince and synthesizers and drum machines, they'll like this music too. So you can check that out too. And you can find me, like I said, on Instagram, Twitter under Honeymoon Snax, and Facebook.
Okay, great. I will definitely put links to the projects you're referring to in the show notes and on social media when this episode goes live. So thank you so much for joining me from across the pond, 6 hours ahead of me. So thanks for staying up late with me, man. Appreciate it.
It's fine. No, it's fine. I mean, to talk about Bob George is, I'll do that. I'll do that anytime. So thanks so much for having me back on, Jason. It was fun as always.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. You can find the show at Press Rewind Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as on YouTube. And check out my Discord if you have an opportunity to, and you like Discord as a server to chat with other Prince fans. You can access the Discord through also my website and the show notes. So find the link there. And until next time, thank you very much and goodbye.